Hello YouTube, Math here, and today we're going to be taking a look at Moonlighter, which is an action RPG with roguelite elements, basically kind of a dungeon crawler in one aspect of the game and a shop management simulator in the other. Moonlighter went through a successful Kickstarter campaign back in May of last year, and I actually backed the game at that time, so I've been looking forward to it for at least a year. As you can see in the lower left there, this is the pre-alpha backers edition that has recently been released. So the game's definitely not complete yet. Release date is set for sometime in 2017. No official date yet. But right now there's the first dungeon, 5 levels of it, and enough that it's worth playing as a game. I've spent a little bit less than an hour in the game so far and been having a fair amount of fun. Like, it's not super buggy or anything like that, and certainly worth sharing with all of you. So that's where we are here. I am going to be going ahead and starting a new game, so this first video is probably going to be mostly tutorial, and then maybe like a little bit of the first dungeon crawl. But yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. In a distant world, strange ruins appeared. Mazes full of strange items and enemies from other worlds. The dungeons, that's how they were called by the people who approached to burgle them. Rynoka was the name given to the village that germinated around them. 2 types of people founded Rynoka: heroes and merchants. The former looked for fame, the latter looked for gold. Now, 70 years later, dungeons are not as prosperous as they used to be, and life is harder than ever, especially for the oldest shop in Rynoka, Moonlighter, and its youngest owner, Will. Alright, so that's our just mentioned Will, a shopkeep in the city of Rynoka, and we're kind of getting in while he's mid-dungeon crawl, I suppose. For our tutorial, it's basically telling us, you know, we can move with the stick because it's a video game and we know how those work. As you can see, like, it's very reminiscent of a sort of SNES Legend of Zelda sort of aesthetic going on. At least that's the vibe that I get from it. We have a dodge roll map to left trigger, which is awful. There is key rebindings, but circle also works, and I'm pretty okay with roll being on circle. And of course, we've got pitfalls that we can leap over. As you can see, we can make a pretty decent jump across stuff like this. Also, the edges are kind of sticky, like you don't immediately fall off of them, although you can push yourself off of them. So there is danger from fall damage. You'll just sort of get reset, but take a chunk of your health off. Also, while rolling, we are immune to damage, so enemies like that guy we can pass right through. And bullets, it's the same story. Alright, and finally, onto the good stuff. Now, Will, being a shopkeep, is not exactly armed to the teeth. Right now, he has his trusty broom, which we have both a regular attack for, as well as a charge attack. And with the charge attack, he does sort of a rushing down kind of thing. Basically, the broom is just a really terrible spear weapon. Later on, there are not so terrible spear weapons that have more or less the same moveset, but do considerably more damage. And as you can see, I got hit just a little bit there. Nothing too bad. And I've got a pot complex, not like that, but enough video games in my life have led me smashing pots anytime I see them. Alright, not so bad. And in this game, oh, come on! In this game, that does pay off at least a little bit. And we're seeing a little bit of loot. So we picked up some twigs off of that guy that are flowing down to our backpack there in the lower right. So we got chests we could explore. I wish right now that there was maybe a little bit more information as you looted. I can pop over to here to see information about it. I've never encountered an ancient pot or a broken sword before, so I don't have much information here. But it would basically be giving me the pricing for all of this. I could go ahead and quick move all of that into my bag, which I'm pretty happy with as far as the looting mechanic goes. And similarly, we can do the same thing there. And you can see stuff stacks. As we look at my loot inventory, you'll notice up here on the little person symbol and then down here on the bag symbol, this stuff we would keep even if we were to unfortunately die, whereas the stuff down in the bag we would drop if we were to die. Now, luckily, we don't have anything down in the bag just yet, and there's a little bit of a stutter. I've actually done this... Whoa. Oh no, I got dazed. Oh, that's awful. I guess I haven't fought many of those enemies before. I've actually done this tutorial 3 times now, and it's always stuttered just a little bit in this room. Oh god, these guys are awful. But that's been the only place that's ever happened. I assume it has something to do with the infinitely spawning enemies and trying to load something about that. So that's a more or less scripted, you gotta die here kind of moment in the game. It demonstrates the death mechanic, which is that if you lose all your health, you get ejected from the dungeon, but you do get to keep that top layer of loot that you've collected. And that was all the loot that we had collected, so not so bad. And we get to meet Xenon. Poor boy. Even if you're alone now, you shouldn't push yourself too hard. Guess it's time to rest. Even if we are alone now. So I guess the backstory for Will is he's been left in charge of the sort of family shop after the recent, or somewhat recent, passing of a family member. I believe it's said to be his grandfather. We're about to get a huge exposition dump, and that's going to be most of the story we receive here. He's been so curious about the dungeon since he was a child. Wow, he even found some of Crazy Pete's notes. I wonder what happened to that loony. Good morning, Will. How is the little merchant doing? Listen, Will. I know you don't have any relative here to help you. It's something common among merchant families. We venture into the dungeons to benefit from the items we find there, but in return, they take our life slowly but steadily. Even though a merchant pendant takes you out of the dungeons when you faint, but then damage to your body is already inflicted. Use the pendant before things get too serious, and please, stop using that broom of yours. It's dangerous to go alone into the dungeons. Take this old sword I used back in the day. Alright, and we get, at least a set of real weaponry here, sword and shield from Xenon. With that being said, get up and we'll try to sell some of the items you've kept in your pockets. Remember, your grandpa was a great friend of mine. I'll try to teach you some tricks he used when selling. So here's going to be the second half of the game. And I actually love this idea for a lot of reasons that I hope to talk about maybe a little bit later when there's more time. But in addition to the dungeon crawling elements, which we just kind of saw during that tutorial bit, there's also this shop that we're running during the day. Come on, open the shop so customers can buy those items. Selling an item depends on several variables: customer purchase level, item value, and item demand. So basically, we're going down into this dungeon in order to loot. It is its own end, basically. We're just there to get the loot. We're not trying to save the world or anything like that, because all of the heroes, the people that are actually trying to save the world, they just buy stuff from us. So where does the shopkeep get all of those amazing potions and stuff that he's selling? It's not Economics 101. It's literally the merchant is down in the dungeons crawling for potions that he's then selling to the heroes trying to save the world. That expression was the best you can get from a customer. As you saw, right as he looked to pick it up, he got a little smiley face. It was not too cheap nor too expensive. Pay attention to visitors' expressions when they look at your prices. They will help you set a fair price for them. So we saw that that basic healing potion at 75 gold is right in the sweet spot. At 188, we're instead going to get a real frowny face, and he's not going to want to buy that. That one meant it was too expensive. Finally, be careful when selling an item too much. Once you satisfy people's need for an item, you'll have to offer them a better price. So make sure to make more profit when there's a high demand for an item. take a look at your merchant notebook. There you can find every info available about the items you sell. And then our merchant book pops up, and we can pop over to here. This is where we looked at it during the tutorial, but didn't really have any information. From here, we're seeing that on the left-hand side, all the items we can scroll through, that HP Potion 1 hits a sweet spot right at 75 gold. We know it's too expensive at 188. There's somewhere where people would buy it, but like be bitter about it. That's kind of the flat face. And there's the gold in the eyes on the far left there, where people would buy it because it's an incredible steal, and we're just kind of selling ourselves short. And wow, look what time it is. So it got dark while we were looking at our bag. That will be everything for now. You will discover the rest on your own. Make sure you bring back the glory to this shop. I know you can. It runs in your blood. Well, let's go out so you can try your new swords at the dungeons. At night, dungeons are more dangerous, but also more profitable. Alright. So this is basically like our daytime job, selling stuff here, and then at night, we come out to head back down into the dungeons in order to get all that loot to sell during the day. Remember, at night, dungeons are more dangerous, but also more profitable. Yep, you just said that. There's a number of shops out in the town. Basically, like we're just not meant to really check those out just now. There's a blacksmith over here. He's closed down right now. We could also head this way. There's like a magic shop and some other vendors in town. One thing I assume from this little post-it board here is, so we can see like the Vulcan's Forge, the Wooden Hat, and Les Retailiers. They can be purchased for 25,000. There's also two shops that we don't know anything about yet. I'm assuming they're not yet in this build. But I'm assuming at 25,000 we could like buy the Vulcan's Forge so that we could start, you know, stocking it. We could like buy the blacksmith, buy the potion seller, buy the generic item retailer, basically. Kind of bring them into the fold and start selling stuff at their shops as well. Right now we're just sort of a generalist store. We just sell whatever. In addition to all of that, there's also the somewhat geographically challenged dungeon. A number of people I've seen mention this, but you can exit the town from like any direction, and when you do, you always end up in that same spot. So there's also like an exit from, you know, over here where we're seeing the other retailers. We could go up, and when we go up and leave the town, it actually makes some degree of sense that we enter in from this path. There were also people in town. We can talk to them. We didn't really get into that. But for right now, we're just going to take on this first dungeon. Now, as we can see, there's sort of these 4 small doors and like a large door to enter through. Right now, they're all barred up except for this entrance. So, of course, this is going to be the entrance we take, right? And this leads us to Golem Dungeon 1. So, we get like a fairly standard dungeon crawl. We've got a mini map there in the lower left. Also really hate these guys. Okay. Those little, like, I don't know. I guess it's a golem dungeon, right? So they're mechanical enemies. As we know, there's some sort of like animating magic that exists. Yeah, I never noticed this before. So those guys are actually like, it's twigs with like slime on top of them. That's why the one earlier dropped twigs. I guess that suddenly makes a whole lot more sense. Maybe this is the stuff that animates golems, and we're just seeing it in its simplest form is some goo poured over some sticks. Not entirely sure. One of my least favorite enemies right here, because I have a, oh man, terrible time trying to hit them. Basically, they're too fast. They're too fast. You gotta hit and run strats. Or if you can manage to get just right on the diagonal, you can hit them where they can't quite hit you. But I really prefer fighting those guys with a spear, where you're not in nearly as much danger. Oh, this is going to be awful, isn't it? Okay, let's go ahead and pop over here, get hit again. Let's try not to die a terrible death this early on. We do have a healing potion, as you might notice in the upper right there. Here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to pull him all the way over here. Go ahead and use our HP potion there. Fail miserably to walk between the bullets. Wow. I guess I should have just dodge rolled, right? It's interesting to me. I'm like, man, I'm suddenly terrible at this game. It's called, the last time I played it, I didn't also narrate my my activities the entire time. But that was a pretty decent loot drop. Let's actually go in here. We should have definitely stored everything before heading into the dungeon. Like, that was a rookie mistake, but I don't think it's going to be a problem, as this is the final room. So, there's a little bit of stuff over here, and then a little bit more plot. To anyone who finds this message, my life is fading out. After fighting that strange creature, my pendant is broken. I'm to remain here, locked up in the dungeons I've studied for so many years. That creature, I saw it once getting out of a room in the 3rd floor through an impressive door, but when it noticed me, it ran away. He left a couple of items really similar to our pendants. Now I think that creature has come to take them back. Those items, I spent some days studying them. Hope you can find some notes near them with their attributes. Please, to anyone reading this, find that door in the 3rd floor. It is linked to the 5th door of Rynoka. Okay, so it hasn't really talked too much about it yet, but we've got the merchant pendant that's mentioned. That's basically like an immortality necklace, in that whenever we get killed, quote unquote, down here, we instead just faint and wake up back out in the town. That's like a fairly magical thing that started happening about 70 years ago. We don't really know much about them, but apparently there's at least some creature that has like similar technology, and maybe it's come out to collect. We'll go ahead and grab all of that stuff, and then finally, this strange cube is similar to the pendant we merchants use. By a high amount of gold, it creates a portal to get out of the dungeons. But what makes this item really valuable is that the portal created can be used to return to the dungeon without it regenerating. Due to its shape, I've decided to call the other item the mirror. This item seems to have been created to work with the other 2 items. As they require gold to work, this item gives the user gold by throwing common items into it. I wonder, where do these items go? And then the cube and the mirror. Alright. Any more tutorializing? Yep, there we go. Dropping an item here will give some gold, allowing to use the merchant pendant. So, we could die to exit the dungeon, right? And we'd lose everything except for this top line of loot. Or, if we want to get out of the dungeon with all this stuff beneath it, we need to use the pendant to escape. Now, it costs gold in order to power itself, so it's 300 gold to leave via the pendant and just go back to town. Or, it's 1,000 gold for like the upgraded version of that, which creates a permanent fixture that we can travel back into town and then come back through. So in order to like kind of, I'm assuming, deep dive into the dungeon, I've not yet gotten off of floor 1, like I've just not played that much, that you would eventually need to be using the cube to like bounce back to town and then come back and that sort of thing. But, you know, there's a cost associated with that. 1,000 gold isn't too steep based on some of the loot that we're going to be finding on here, so I'm not terribly worried. For right now, though, we need 300 gold. So that gives us 125, not so bad, right? We could actually get it just with this stuff. How much are these each? 110, perfect. All right, so just throwing away a few broken swords, we're able to get there. We'll go ahead and generate a portal with the merchant's pendant, and we get kind of a synopsis of our performance in the dungeon, and then pop back to town. And very conveniently, we actually don't land at like the exit to the dungeon. We land like right next to our house. A little portal appears there and then pops away. I'm assuming when we use the cube that it just stays there and that we're able to walk back into it. All right, so we're probably going to finish up this video just after a little bit more shopkeeping to do. So this, and one of the reasons to do it this way is I'm probably not going to show all of this on video. My favorite method for doing this is basically like when you very first start out, you have no idea how much like any of this stuff sells for. And so what I like to do is just sort of place things, and then I know this is wrong, but I'm just going to be like demonstrative here. So let's say we want to check if that's worth 500, and then we want to check and see if that's worth also 500. And with one of these, and we'll go with one of these. Now the only item you've seen so far in the game has been the potion, and it sold for 75. This stuff is basically crafting junk, so I'd say it's fairly unlikely that it's also going to sell for 500, let alone maybe even 75. Anyway, but we're gonna go ahead and open our shop and kind of see how things go. Basically what I'm wanting to do here is just have people come in, say it's too expensive, and then me adjust pricing. And then what I can do is just sort of go, let's go down to like 200 on each. And this is again, like some of the stuff I actually remember how much I should be selling it for, but there's really no way to know starting out. So too expensive still. I know, like, I want to say at least the broken sword, I want to say actually sells for like a pretty decent sum, like 150. This other stuff I don't actually think is worth very much. This might be. Let's try like 150 here as well. This may seem a little painful, and like, yeah, okay, so that did in fact sell for 150. Let's see if we could go maybe a little bit higher. You'll notice when we place it, it automatically remembers the price. That's awesome. Like, it greatly simplifies all this as it sort of gets started. And that will sell for 100. That's also good to know. Let's maybe try it for like 140, 150. Let's go with 150. Nice round number. The idea here is basically just to get some idea of pricing for everything. Once you've sort of established a base price of what you can sell things for, this is all really straightforward. We can sell stacks of things all at one time. So it was worth 100, but not worth 150. And that's not worth 100 at all. I don't think the jelly is actually worth selling, period. Because it's going to sell for like 20, and you can use it in your own crafting recipes to make potions, and worth way more there. Okay, so it will sell for that, but they're not terribly happy about it, which is fine. We did kind of get encouraged to like price gouge while you can. Eventually people are gonna like lose demand as we start satisfying some of that demand, and the price that they'll pay will go down. All right, and I'm sure someone has rejected this, and I've just like not seen them do so. So we'll take that back down to there. And then what we can now do is grab stacks of stuff. It'll automatically adjust the pricing. Whoa, not like that though. For multi-items, which is fairly cool. And then like that. And then I'm actually just going to take this back and use it in some of my own crafting. Yeah. So eventually you can start, just stacking stuff. You know how much it's going to sell for. People will come in, they'll buy it. You can do all this really quickly. There's just a very first day sort of rough patch that you've got to go through where it's sort of necessary to sell stuff one at a time and get an idea of how much the pricing is worth, etc., etc. I'm actually going to go ahead and kick everybody out and just close the shop to do two other things. One is I'm going to go ahead and go to sleep. What that's going to do is save the game as well as move us into the next morning. I'm actually not going to go adventuring again right away. And then now that it's daytime, we're going to use this as an opportunity to just visit those other shops. So, like I said, you can talk to people. Rynoka may not be as prosperous as it used to be. Nevertheless, a lot of us come to visit and get souvenirs from the dungeons. Nice. So, at the Vulcan's Forge, we can buy armor. As you can see here, there's like a helmet, a chest piece, and some boots, and then 4 different levels of those things. In the lower right-hand corner, there's a price associated with it, as well as some crafting recipe stuff that we need to bring in. Then we've got swords. There's kind of a branching path of ways we can upgrade those. Right now, we've just got the basic sword. We could, with that middle thing that is currently grayed out, we would be able to do this, so not too far away. Of course, it's also going to cost 10,600 gold. We made, we've got 1,500 from that first dungeon adventure, so it's not nearly as far off as it sounds. Similarly, there's like a big kind of greatsword and 2 branching paths of upgrading those. We've got spears with 2 branching paths. We've got gloves, and we've got bows, all with 2 branching paths of upgrades. Of course, we can't even see these yet, so I wonder if that means like I need to discover like a blueprint or how I find out what these other recipes actually are. They also might not be implemented yet. We are in, you know, super crazy pre-alpha. So we didn't have really enough to be worried about any of that. I'd also say I'd probably cool it on any of the basic levels of bow, spear, etc., as you're fairly likely, from my experience, to find those in the first level of the dungeon, and you know, there's no need to pay for them because you'll loot them pretty consistently. Over here we've got Le Retalier. I'm hoping that's not actual like French. If it is, then I'm sorry for butchering it. But basically another kind of general store merchant. He sells potions, he sells rich jellies, he can sell you a broom spear, which is free, so I'm assuming this is like the just in case kind of weapon. And then he sells sword and shield for 4,000. You'll also notice that his HP potion is 187. We like can't get away with that price in our own shop, but instead we undercut him at 75. He also sells a lot of the crafting materials, primarily I think so that you would be able to like use them at the blacksmith, more so than any kind of system where you could just resell them for profit. Now, having said that, I do want to demonstrate at least one thing. Rich jelly is 12. And if we take a rich jelly and then we head down to our magic shop down here, the little potion seller at the wooden hat, she can do a few things. So she can sell potions as well. They're 75 here, the same price that we sell them for. But we can also craft potions by using, you guessed it, the jelly that we just bought. So it's 12 to buy it, 30 more to turn it into a potion. So for 42, we can actually make 75. I'd say it's not efficient enough to be like, oh my god, it's an exploit. But that is a way that you can kind of like always make a little bit of extra coin if needed. Then she's got like these HP potion ones are healing 25% of your HP. She got these for 50, these for 75, and a fully restored. You know, only 2,005 gold a pop. So we are not currently going to be using that. Also got speed potions and whatever this thing is that is not labeled, but we can't buy that for right now. So if you ever needed to, you know, you could come and buy, you know, dozens of jellies for 12, then go craft them into potions for another 30, then go sell them in your own shop listed at 75, make a tidy little profit, that sort of thing. I don't think that's terribly necessary for right now. I did say that there was nothing we could get here. So we already have a sword, that's 1,000. We just don't have like the other materials really to get any of this stuff. Yeah. So far my favorite weapons have been the spear and the bow, really. I think I've done the best when I was using a big sword, but it felt really awkward to wield it. So I don't know how I feel about all that. Anyway, that is Moonlighter in a nutshell. That kind of basic game loop. I've not gone any further than the first dungeon. There's some other mechanics about the dungeon. There's some like fairly big, roamy, deadly monster things down there, and some mechanics related to how quickly we can complete it. We'll see those in later episodes, though. What I think I'm going to do off camera is just get my base pricing for like all of my objects down during the day. That way you guys never have to suffer through that again for like those basic kind of dozen or so crafting items. And once I've got that sorted out, we'll be able to pick up in another episode with another full first floor dungeon crawl to the end and kind of see where that goes and how much profit we're able to make from just that one dungeon crawl. I do hope you guys have enjoyed Moonlighter so far. There's not been a lot of coverage on it. It's still presumably months and months away from release, but this feels like maybe a short little series we can do getting to the boss on the 5th level of the Golem dungeon. You know, kind of assuming it's going to be the Golem, but who knows? I've been surprised before. But I figure that's going to be enough content to at least make a short series out of, so I'm very curious to hear your guys' feedback. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe. There's lots more on the channel. You can leave a like or a comment if you have anything to say about this or any of my other videos, and I will catch you guys next time.